So this weekend I was hanging out in Asmon's stream. I actually stuck around to watch them do some Kara, because that's about the level of Kara that I think I have time to go get involved in. The people that are doing these world first clears and somebody like me would have very different experiences. So them like blasting through it straight through, that's not the amount of time it would take me to gear up and get into that content. So it was nice to get to watch him dive into that. Definitely brought back some memories. And he was doing some reaction style content before that. And he was talking about what he would want to play if he played 14. And then also why he didn't want to play 14. Kind of where this fear seats from. And I think it's an interesting topic. I clipped it and tweeted it out. So those of you that follow us on Twitter, thank you for watching that and kind of commenting and coming and continuing that conversation. But I wanted to continue it here for anybody that maybe just is kind of speculating at some of why he wouldn't like the game or he would like the game. And so let's watch the clip and then we'll talk about this.
I'll say that it definitely does look badass. Now I could go through and look at a million different ones of these. If I ever do play, here's the way I look about playing this game, okay? Is that I would be willing to play this game, but I don't want to have it be like a weird fucking thing. Like, I'll play it on my main stream. I don't want to play it like off stream or whatever. But like, I just don't want it to be some kind of weird ass shit where like people get mad if I do or I don't like the game.
Now, before this, he talked about like, hey, if I want to play the game, I want to use like a big old dark sword or a big old two-handed sword. And everybody suggested Dark Knight. And so that's why the job action trailer is up. He was watching some Dark Knight of the job action trailer going into Shadowbringers, and he liked it. It looked awesome, which, you know, that's a chance for a class to look awesome. That doesn't even mean it plays awesome. That's just kind of basics, and having a visual appeal to the game makes sense. And he watched a little bit of gameplay, and you know, there's a lot of flashy lights and stuff in Final Fantasy gameplay, especially depending on how you have your settings set. And it didn't immediately grab him. So they said, no, go to the job action trailer. That's where you're going to see just your job. And that's what he did and thought it looked awesome. He talked about, like, that's what got him to play BDO. And so, you know, if he were to play, he'd play Dark Knight. And here is why he doesn't think that he would end up playing.
I just want to play the game and just see what it's like. Because I feel like it's gotten into this point where if I ever fucking talk about the game, it's like a bunch of weirdos that are like super opinionated about it and try to like fucking say how much they hate WoW, and it's like, oh well, then try to like fucking mind read me and be like, oh well, you are afraid of liking like some weird shit, you know? Like I don't want to deal with that. I just don't. And so it looks badass, man. Like,
yeah, and so basically there's this fear of kind of, it's not just his community mocking him. There's people that are like, oh, his community would bail. He's played other games on stream before, and at the end of the day, like, he's made it abundantly clear to his community he's going to play what he wants when he wants. He's taken breaks. He's done all of these things. Asmongold has had success at being him. And so Zach has done an incredible job of building a community that will tolerate him being him. I mean, they meme him into the ground for things all the time. There's a lot of running jokes on that community. There's a lot of people in that chat that know 14. There's a lot. Anytime he says a question, the answer just gets spammed. There's a lot of people in there that are clearly 14 players, because some of these questions, like, there's no way somebody who's never touched 14 would know this stuff so quickly. It just is. So for the people that think his community is a bunch of 14 hating people, that's clearly not the case. There's a lot of people in that chat ready to spam things. And for the people that are going to hate on it no matter what, they're not going to try it. But there's this fear of drawing in the hate of the 14 community, which absolutely there is a proven track record of doing to people that like the community, like Scott Zone, or people that think the community is maybe not for them, like Lazy Peon. The community has a strong reaction to people that they feel are coming in and threatening their game, whether or not that has any bearing on whether or not it's true. And so I think he has a logical fear there. And I think that, you know, he went on to say after this, I just clipped like the core statement there, that basically, if he plays it and doesn't like it, that doesn't mean other people can't like it. And if he plays it and does like it, that doesn't mean he needs to leave WoW for it. And there's kind of this pressure, like he can just play it just to try it. And that can be that. He doesn't need to be under an obligation to keep playing it a certain amount of time, or if he stops playing it, that means something. Like, he can just play it, and if you play it and you like it, that's enough. And I think that it's really apt that, like, this response came out of the person that the 14 community, the people who seem to not want WoW creators or WoW creators communities to ever try Final Fantasy 14. For the people that are against that, I think that it coming directly from him, just play your game and enjoy it. Just whatever game you want to enjoy, just enjoy it, and that's okay. I think for that to come from him felt really, really perfect. I think for that to be, directly from the person that they are most afraid of bringing toxicity into the community, for him to say, no, like, my fear of playing it is that, people are going to read into this, and it's not just going to be play what you enjoy. My fear is that people are going to make this whole thing out of it. And he said, like, I don't want to play it off stream. I want to play it on stream. If I'm going to do it, I want to play it on stream. If I'm going to do it, I want to play Dark Knight. And I don't know. I just thought this was a really interesting kind of play into this whole mess, right? Where there's this kind of content as 14 creators and WoW creators kind of have this weird moment where we have more overlap than typical. Where we have more public overlap than typical. And a lot of that is fueled by one game being in this immense success time when the other game is really struggling. And usually that doesn't happen because they don't go head to head. They alternate expansion years. And so one game is entering hype as the other game is entering the backstretch. And so they go back and forth. And so if there's one part of an MMO cycle, you might jump every other year between these games. If there's an expansion you don't like, you might catch the back half of one expansion, the first half of another, so you never really have a full picture of, it's not Shadowbringers against BFA, because the beginning of Shadowbringers was against BFA, but Shadowbringers was just getting started, so it's not a complete thought. But it's not Shadowbringers against Shadowlands, because we're sitting in the 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5 patch going into 6.0. And so for the back half of Shadowlands, as we talk about 9.1 and 9.2 in Shadowlands, you're going to be talking about Endwalker in Final Fantasy. And so they're never exactly apples to apples, even before you look at the actual differences where an 80 or 90% of a raid system or a combat system or a side system such as like mini pets or something like that, that last little bit is where they differ, but they're also just in totally different states in their life cycle at all times. And so this is kind of a weird moment in these communities where there's a lot of overlap, where people in WoW have some downtime. They have some free time. Michael over on Preach Gaming, Mike said that, he said that, yeah, like it's frustrating. Like he's getting into open world content for the first time, really, because he's never had a lot of time for open content because he's always been busy raiding. And, as he tries to kind of broaden what he's doing in the game, like as he had a direct interview with Ian Hanakostas, which is their Yoshi P. And he had a chance to do that interview. And one of the questions was like, you said this was an alt-friendly expansion, and I've leveled 12 alts. And not at the same time. He later admitted that question maybe could have used some better phrasing. But like he's done this stuff a bunch of times and it doesn't age well. It doesn't engage in a way that makes it really fun to dive in and spend this long on one patch. And I don't know that any MMO would. For 14 players, just imagine if COVID had hit the Square team even harder and we had just cut like an entire section out of the Relic, and we had not ended Ishgard Restoration, and we'd cut 9 through 12S. Like, just imagine if we said, you know what, to keep Endwalker on time, we're going to have to cut basically a whole patch. They did trim down the size of these patches to keep them on time, but imagine if they just cut one altogether. That's an incredibly frustrating place to be as a player, and so it's created a lot of downtime. And I think it's really interesting that, Asmon's kind of hit on this point. Like, if I do want to try it, I don't want there to be any pressure on, if I go back to WoW at 9.1, that doesn't have to mean anything. If I don't like it, that doesn't mean you guys don't like it. If I do like it, that doesn't mean I'm going to leave WoW. And that's before you get into the money side of this. For the fact that he makes more than most WoW creators, I think Asmon needs the money less than maybe somebody like Bellular that has a whole staff underneath him. And that stability is something that it's not just he's going to decide to trim the budget around his house. There are other people whose livelihoods depend on him. And so I think he has to be really, really aware of that. Asmon definitely is part of, has a ton of stuff on the back end of him, but he lives a relatively simple lifestyle compared to the amount of money that he's likely made. And, he's talked about in the past on his personal channel over on Zakrar that, like, he was already living like this. When people say they want to be like him, that shouldn't be your goal, because he was already like him before he had the money. The money isn't what made this lifestyle possible. He was living this lifestyle when there really wasn't a justification in spending this amount of time on video games. That was his preference. And so if you have these other options, you want to be him for a day, you don't want to be him. He wants to be him, and that's clear from the fact that he already was doing this prior to the success, prior to the following. And so you're catching him. Like, Asmongold is an elevated part of his personality, and Zakrar is this much more down to earth. Or when he's on this, somebody sent me a Dr. K interview, there's this much more down to earth, but it is all within this same guy, and that's just him. I've seen a lot of comments saying secretly they think he's been playing 14 this whole time. I think he's a lot more raw than that. I don't think there's this conspiracy where on the back end, he's got this whole alter life. I think you're looking at him, and for WoW creators coming over that do like him, and you're coming over and maybe I'm not your taste. Maybe I'm, kind of boring because I'm safe for work or whatever. And yeah, my views change over the Bellular videos. You see me kind of shift from video to video based on how that video hits me emotionally, because they are very raw videos and you're catching my raw reaction. When you look at Asmongold, one of the things that stands out about him is he's a lot more foul language on stream than me. A lot more. And he has this, all right, boys, let's get good. Like, let's do this. And in the 14 community, that's typically going to come from your more top end, talks similar, and acts a similar way. And so that's going to come from people like Xeno and Arthurs. And so that personality is there. That knowledge when he did the OTK coverage. We have that out of people like Frosty and Haps. If he ever talks about that stuff in the past, he partakes in the world first. But Mr. Happy, that's where that comes from. That long time knowledge and passion, and I only need to play the one game, and I'll try these others, but this one game is enough for me. We see that out of Zepla. He regularly reacts to Zepla, or has over the past, because I think that's a good comparison to part of what he brings. No one creator is going to be apples to apples, and it's not that he sums up all of them combined. It's that parts of them align with parts of him, because they're different people. And I think he brings a lot to the content creation space in the people who like him and the people that don't. And I think this was a really good way for him to say, like, this is the fear coming over this way. In my mind, content creators that are full-time in World of Warcraft are actually less likely to come over to Final Fantasy than World of Warcraft players. People are like, oh, they're just coming over for the money. No, like, they run the risk of their community being really mad and saying, like, whoa, this isn't what I got in for. And the way the algorithm works, like, if they do that and they hop out, it's hard to get those views back. You don't just jump right backward to where you were. That's not how the algorithm works. Like, it pays to stay on top. And so I think that Asmongold saying that he would, even mentioning that there's a potential he would try this game, is very much a revealing, like, that, you know what, like, I am curious and I would try it just to try it, but I need to know that I can just try it. And, like, I want to share that with everybody. I think that'd be interesting, but it can't be this whole thing. It can't be this whole...
It definitely does look badass.
Like,
now, I could go through and look at a million different ones of these. If I ever do play, here's the way I look about playing this game, okay? Is that I would be willing to play this game, but I don't want to have it be like a weird fucking thing. Like, I'll play it on my main...
It can't be a weird thing. It can't be a weird thing.
Stream. I don't want to play it like off stream or whatever.
It can be public. It doesn't need to be this, I'm going to set aside time and try to hide it and squirrel it away. Like, let's do it. Main channel, let's go. I would love to see an interaction between him and a 14 creator, the way he interacts with McConnell. I would love to see him be in a voice chat with somebody that can keep up with his pace and has the knowledge and can keep up with his personality and can deal with the flack they're going to get from his community, because it's going to be a lot from the vocal group, because that kind of meme-ness is part of that culture. When you get into streams of that size, it doesn't represent the whole community, but that you got a lot of people that once a meme catches, it's fun to toss your meme into the chat. And so that kind of takes hold. Ninja's commented on that in interviews. And so I think for me, I don't know who that creator is. Haps was my suggestion last time this sort of concept got brought up, but I don't know who this creator is. But it would be really interesting to see somebody that could kind of be there to answer his questions and could be there to kind of guide his journey. Wouldn't take it personal if he wants to ask questions about the story. Wouldn't take it personal if he wants to skip the story. And could be there just to kind of translate. Maybe Zepla's a good match because she's played WoW and he already has a lot of respect for her. And there are people in the community that discovered 14 because Asmon reacted to Zepla. They went and got interested in Zepla, and Zepla brought them into 14. So maybe that's the logical answer. But I think that if he's gonna hop in to make an event of it where, like, when it ends, it can just end, there would be something nice about, like, that's this thing I did with them. And when that ended, like when Classic launched, he was doing all that stuff with Estefan. And so, like, that made it to where, like, if he didn't want to continue covering Classic outside of that kind of collaborative nature, that would have been like, okay, that's just something I did with them. Now that time with them is over, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't know. He's got the plan. He's worked very hard to get where he is. I just thought this was interesting and wanted to share the clip and kind of some of my thoughts around it. Because it's just about gaming, kinda.